Welcome to another episode of Unblock Your BS. On today's episode, we have a coaching call. So, Brian had reached out to me through the DMs after he had seen a couple of my posts, wanting to get some coaching, and I needed a coaching guest for the podcast, so he decided to come on. Now, Brian is in his late 40s, lives in the west part of Texas, kind of a smaller town. And really has struggled with relationships. He's had 3 marriages and kids with 2 of those marriages, and really was struggling in the dating world, almost to the point where he just kind of like got so by dating that he just doesn't really do it anymore. It's not a priority for him, which no judgment. But you could tell in his line of questioning and in the conversation we have today on the episode, there's still a desire for that, right? And he uses kind of his family history to really understand the partners he chose in his wives, and also his grandmother, who acted more like a mom to him. He didn't have a great relationship with his mom, and grandma was a saint in his eyes. And so we talk about how that affects us as we move into adulthood and talk through or start to pick partners, is that it's rooted in childhood. Every single time it's rooted in childhood. In fact, I just had a breathwork client before I did this interview who was like, Tara, I know I've heard you say that before, like it's in childhood, but my issues were not from childhood. It was from my ex-wife or from my previous partner that these issues came up. And I said, who chose that partner? Your nervous system was already wired that way to choose a partner that was unhealthy for you, even though you didn't see that at the beginning. We see that further down the roads, oftentimes years or even decades, but your nervous system was already wired that way. How? Because it learned it in childhood. And I walked him through an exercise where we actually figured he was describing his relationship with, I believe it was his mom, and how he wanted his mom's attention more and how his mom treated him. And after he said that, I looked at him and went like, does that sound anything like how your marriage was? And he just kind of laughed and went, all right, you got me. Like he wanted to fight me on it of like, nope, this isn't a childhood issue. And every time it is. And this is the work I do deeply with clients, is understanding where the root beliefs were created that are causing and driving the bus of decisions as an adult that are having us attached to unhealthy partners, or self-abandoning, or not speaking up for ourselves, or getting walked all over, or projecting onto other people our hurts and all this. It all stems back to childhood. And this is what's unbelievably fascinating for me. And without fail, 100% of the time we get to the root and we can start to work and heal where the root belief was created. Now, I don't do that necessarily on these podcast episodes because it gets into a lot of vulnerable stuff that people aren't going to share necessarily as openly on a public forum. But Brian did a great job of peeling back the layers. Just kind of notice one thing that is a very common strategy for people who kind of struggle with vulnerability a little bit. He did a great job sticking with me throughout the session, but I would ask a question and he would talk around it. Okay. And I called him out on that, right? Because I was like, great, love that story. You didn't answer my question. That happened a couple times. And that's not to say that what he was doing is right, wrong, bad, or good. None of that. But be observant of how easy it is to get caught up in a story somebody's telling when you've asked them something specific. It is kind of a disassociation strategy, or maybe he didn't know the answer, and that's totally fine. And when he actually stuck with answering the question, we got to some great breakthroughs. So I'm so excited for you to listen in on this coaching session with Brian. And if you are wanting to work one-on-one with me, head on over to unblockyourbs.com/podcast. There's a link there where you can find a time to schedule some one-on-one time with me, and we can start to help you unblock your BS. All right, on to the episode with Brian. All right, Brian. Well, kind of clue me in as to why you reached out and wanted some coaching.
Sure. Like I was telling you a little bit earlier, my female interactions have been rocky to say the least. I've been divorced a couple times, and I have kids with 2 different wives, that kind of thing. And when you get single and you're in business, you have a lot of time to think. That can be really good or really bad. And one of the things that I've realized is all 3 of my marriages kind of mirrored how my mom and dad interacted, which was not good. It was just, there was a lot of browbeating from her side, passive aggressive, in his face, behind his back.
Yeah.
And, I actually, once football got over and I was out of my purpose and trying to figure out what to do next, so I tried to be quote unquote normal, get married, without being too satirical, have be miserable, have a job you hate, It's just what you do,
Children.
right? Yeah. I don't even like dogs. I mean, I'm not against them, but like, I don't want a dog. I don't want another child, but like, and so I married three of my mothers,
Yeah.
and I got the same results of their deal. Their my mom and dad's marriage. And looking back on it, especially seeing some of your contents, had me reflecting on it. The person that I really revered as a matriarch and our whole family really was my grandmother, my late grandmother. We talked every day as an adult. Um, had a beautiful marriage with her husband. Like I know he had a head injury right about the time I was born, and she literally just took super care of him his whole life. Like, you know what I mean? Like she had his medicine, the doctor stuff. She ran a really big business in our hometown, employed everybody, helped everybody. It was a thorough the community, all that kind of stuff. Just a wonderful human being. And if I had to look back, and if I could go back and look at it again, I probably would have looked at people with the qualities of her, if that makes sense. And so, with all these horrible interactions I've had with my ex-wives, and, you know, really the first one we didn't have kids, the last two we did, I find myself just shoving women away. Like you give me a bad feeling, I'm like, go away, out there, screw you. And to be honest, like I've missed out on some really good people because we're all kind of broken.
Yeah.
We're all
Facts.
so that's kind of something that I'm working through now, and I'm being more compassionate. But at the same time, you got to be hyper vigilant to kind of protect yourself too from, I don't know what your age is, but I'm 47. The dating's kind of weird out here. There's a lot of people that'll be different up front. Then you get to know them a little bit, and then all their stuff comes out. And it's like, so, anyway, just working through that kind of thing. I mean, I do work a lot, but I don't really prioritize relationships that much.
Right.
Well,
Well, if I'm understanding, and again, reading through some of the words you're saying, you desire a healthy partnership, much like your grandmother had with grandfather.
that
You admire.
she,
Go ahead.
and she went through. I just watched a family member, her die over the years. You get older, that happens. And she was just stoic through the whole thing. But when he passed, like it was devastating to her. And like she literally, it wasn't a fun last part of his life for her. I mean, he was, like I said, he was really ill. When you get a head injury, sometimes you age really fast. He did that, but no, I mean the way she talked about him even after he passed was just wonderful and that kind of thing. And
So
you know,
let me ask you this, because I want to pull out this grandmother thread. What if you had to describe her feelings and relationships toward her husband? How would you describe it? What kind of adjectives would you use?
it was unconditional. Like honored the vows and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like she was there and like she never, she was older when he passed, but she never even entertained like going to coffee with a guy or anything. You know what I mean? She's like, I had the best here.
So loyal.
Well, I mean, all the things that we were, that are in the vows that we take that a lot of times don't end up being true. And on my side too, I mean, I'm not perfect, and I do think I'm probably a better person single than I am married. I'm single as a Pringle now. I literally do nothing wrong. Like,
So it's interesting. This happens for a lot of people is that you do all the healing and self-awareness work, what I call in a vacuum, meaning when you're by yourself. And then you get into relationship and all of a sudden things start unraveling, right? It's because we have relationship wounds that are only triggered in the context of relationships. So a lot of people will go through a healing journey after divorce or heartbreak, right? And they'll be like, I'm so good. I'm ready to get back out there. And then all of a sudden, all that healing work they perceive just goes right out the window because now the wounds that were actually the problem that created the disconnect in the divorce or in the marriage now come back up again. But that's also the beautiful thing of relationships when you find healthy partners who you can have that open, honest, vulnerable conversation where you can actually heal those relationship wounds within the relationship. They can't be healed in the vacuum.
I agree with that, and like a big part of mine was my last divorce. Like it was right after COVID, and we had moved in with, like, if you have a struggling marriage, you want to kill it, move in with your in-laws. Like, that would,
Yeah.
like, yeah, man, and I was trying to just stay there, so because I've been divorced twice before, and she had it, and like I was just like, look, if we can move out of your folks' house, we can work on this. And it was just like she wouldn't relent on it, so I finally was like, fine, and then I actually moved back out to West Texas where I could have a lot more salary and earning power out there. I couldn't really make as much where we were living, and I literally just, and this is one thing a lot of people don't do too. I don't know if you've talked about it or not. Got okay with being by myself. Like, I literally did. You know what I mean? Like, just in general. Because, I mean, and I learned that a lot of people, like, if you're working on yourself and doing things, a lot of people that are fully available all the time, really, there's a reason they hire. And so it just made me start discerning my relationships, just even friendships and stuff. It's like, okay, is this adding or subtracting from where I want to go? Right.
Yeah.
So, they're balanced. Sure.
Talk to me about so three marriage. When was your first marriage? What age were you?
Wow, maybe like 23, 23.
Okay. So we've had three
Right.
marriages in 20 years. Talk to me about why we moved to marriage to marriage to marriage, right? Because I assume there was a little bit of I don't want to say jumping from relationship to relationship, but maybe something happening.
Yeah. Um, I wish I had this explanation for it. I mean, first wife was my first ever intimate partner. We were in college together. She quit her athletic career and then was go to grad school with me. And she gave me an ultimatum, and I just took it. And I was like, okay, I'll marry you. I guess that's what I do. And she just wasn't we weren't a great fit. And I how can I put it? She was my mother. And I put her through PA school, and we moved from a place I loved in Baton Rouge to West Texas, which was a horrible move because makes you don't love Baton Rouge, right? Like, and you move out of the desert, I'm like, where the hell are we moving to? Like. And I ended up being fine or whatever, but like I just went along with it. I didn't buck her on anything. I think that was kind of a dynamic from my dad. He just took it. He just took it all the time.
Right.
Didn't push back against what his needs would be or what mine. I mean, there was a PA school sitting there in Baton Rouge. If I just stuck my head down, it's like, no, why don't we see which ones you get into first before we move almost two times a time zone away. And so I'm also stubborn and I'm a slow learner, even though I have good grades and good academic. I have a pedigree and all that. I don't sound like I have one, but I do. And a lot of my football career and academic career was me just being stubborn and pushing through stuff. And you can't do that with everything. You
Right.
can't
It
just,
gets you in the professional world, especially as a man, gets you promotions and raises and achievements. Whereas in relationships, it bulldozes your partner, right? Because there's a human who has their own opinions and feelings, right?
yeah. And like there's an output most of the time of that. And it works. Like as a very unathletic football player, like on paper, it worked really well because I just pushed and I did my best all the time. And I just thought I should be married. That's why I tried to teach high school life knowledge. My parents are educators. I played college ball, so I played football. I would rather dig a church rock ditch with a pickaxe than teach high school again. I hated it so bad, and it messed with me to the point I had a breakdown about it. I didn't even finish the year because I should like this, right? My parents do it. I should love this,
It's
and
like that's how you treated marriage as well.
yeah,
I should like this. Everybody's married. Like that's what you do.
and if you get down to it, a lot of people are unhappily married, and I hate to say that, but they'll tell us single people about it. They won't tell their married friends like they're on this club or something, but like you know, I, but I just kept trying to be that white picket fence, 1.5 kid, have a job, be miserable, just,
So why was that the vision? Even though it may have sounded ugh, but that's what you
I'll tell you honestly, like I was pre-med and undergrad. I had a great GPA. I had like a 3.7 or something. Like But then I took the MCAT during 2 days my senior year, so I've been practicing football twice a day. Was in 1 AA level for 2 weeks prior. And then I had an 8-hour test my Saturday of everything I've ever forgotten in a science class in college, right? So that's how you don't go to med school, right? I could have taken it again. I'm glad I did it. I keep the blood and guts and stuff. So it worked out, it worked out that way. And then I was like, okay, what do I do now? Like that was the first point where I was like, okay, football. Like I told my dad when I was in 5th grade, I said, I'm going to play college football. I did. And everything was towards that and going to medical school. I didn't have fun in college. I did some stuff, but to have a 3.7 and play football is in biology and chemistry. You don't do much else. So I think I never thought about a contingency plan if med school didn't work out.
Right.
So, and so I went to grad school. I ended up getting a fellowship to go to grad school. They pay for everything. And so I went to LSU. It was great. Loved it. I could make B's too. That was even fun. You didn't have to worry about making A's and everything. It sucked.
So why the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the
I
American?
had no idea. I never just thought about what I wanted. And I just kept pushing this circle peg in a square hole, and it just never fit. And it never fit. It never fit. And I got fired from so many jobs. Oh my God. Like I've been fired from more jobs than I've left.
Yeah.
Because I mean, should have been an entrepreneur. It wasn't that I was a bad person. I just can't keep my mouth shut when something doesn't make sense in a W-2 job capacity. Like I cannot do it. And so it finally hit me. I had moved back away from my kids. I was getting off my feet again. I went to an insurance convention. Life insurance is what I do now. And I'm like, and I didn't even explore the ordained ministry, to the point that I had the gifts, but not the calling to do that. And I went to my first insurance thing, and a guy got up there and said some stuff. I'm like, this is what God put me on earth today. Here. Now, that doesn't mean everything's great. Like, I mean, you know this, you work in your calling too. But it's like, okay, I have clarity on that now. And this can get everything the way I want to get it. And I'm not going to quit. I'm going to figure it out. I mean, entrepreneurship, you're always figuring it out. You're always solving problems. And yeah, and since then, you know, uh, then you figure out, okay, I was the black sheep the whole time of the family. Right? I was always the black sheep. Once I quit playing football and everything was socially acceptable to do and useless grad degree and get useless undergrad degrees, like, yeah, I went home a few years ago and I was like, I'm the black sheep of the family. Let's just figure that out, you know? And that's okay. So I just kept trying to be normal for 20 years and it just never worked.
Well, because you had a definition of normal that was in conflict with your own internal goal.
That's who I am. That's who I am.
Well, I can argue that you actually didn't know, and we can explore now, but didn't know who
Yeah.
you were. So you look to everyone else to tell you who you were, including I'm a football player. I have an identity of a football player. That goes away. I have an identity of being a med school student and going into medical. That didn't work out. I had an identity of being a husband. That didn't work out. And even in your partners, you looked at women to tell you who you were and how to do things. And then they steamrolled you, right?
They spoke some shit in my life, I mean, they literally,
It, right? Without
I did. I know. And I internalized it, man. I believed it. It's the worst. That's the worst part of it. And that's what my mom did to my dad. That's all. And my grandmother worshiped her husband, even though he was an invalid most of my life. Like this happened when I was born. And like, I'm like, I just never really thought about, Sean Whalen says this all the time. What do you want? Like nobody will ask themselves that. I'm sure you do that with some of your people. It's like,
themselves, they don't know how to answer. It is the tough.
because the answer probably scares them because they might not be with the person they're with and they might not be doing the thing that they're doing. And it scares them. I lost so many quote unquote friends when I left the oil and gas industry. Like I ended up making more in a week than I did in a month at my job, part time at night. And I still didn't quit. So I feel like, and this is kind of messed up for some way, but I wasn't going to quit. Like I wasn't, I had $100,000 a year job, had a truck, I hated it. And then I got walked into a guy's, I don't recommend this for anybody, but I got and walked into a guy's office that I didn't call on purpose because I was going to cuss him out. Like, and I knew my company, the one I was with at that time, like he was gonna have an argument. That customer would have had an argument with me, and I didn't go see him. Well, I got walked into his office third party one day, and me and him just had it out. And he called my company, told him something. I got fired like that day, and I view that in retrospect as God shoving me into doing what I'm supposed to do. Okay, you're not going to quit. You're stubborn. And I actually wrote both my boss and that customer an email that day. I said, "Thank y'all for freeing me from this deal." And you know, the crazy thing about it is when we go down this authenticity path or whatever, you lose everybody that you thought were your friends. Like everyone. And family too. They hate you. And I kind of view that as not doing right now, that people hate me for whatever reason, you know. But all that to be said, you know, this cookie cutter life that we're all should do. And I have a problem with the church saying this. I've had a clergy tell me this, that everyone should be married and have kids. I don't think that's true. You can't make blankets or everyone should own a house or everyone should be an entrepreneur. You can't say those things. Like
And if you are furthering an agenda, and this is not a religious conversation, but when you start to pull back the mask of self-awareness to realize everything that you know to be true in life was told to you by somebody else who had some sort of agenda, right? Whether it was to educate you, whether it was to control you, whether it was to raise you, to make you respectful, everything that you've ever heard is a belief from another human being. And so depending on what you're raised in, your family values, your family systems, it comes from generations. That's how we have generational trauma is it's the beliefs of things that have been passed around. And when you start to question and challenge everything, as we often do when we've hit rock bottom and we're like, well, everything I thought I knew isn't working and I'm miserable. And some people never challenge that. And that's how they stay miserable for years and die of health issues because they've repressed themselves for so long. Those types of things happen where you're like, "Wait a second, you're saying everyone should do this? I don't what about free choice? Like, what about people who can't have kids? Are they now less than those that can't?" Right? Like, you start to pull at the threads.
people believe that. That's the thing. You know,
And more power to them. You're welcome to have your life as long as you're intentional about them.
but the thing is, like, and it's not almost like they just vomited on you like they've repeated it 20 million times in their lifetime.
They have.
And so I have a funny saying, but it's true that I've done two things three times, and I love my kids. Okay, I'm gonna put that out. I love them.
Yep.
I've done two things three times that I don't think everybody ought to do, which is have kids and get married. It's not neither one of those things is for everybody, and you shouldn't go get a job. I mean, you know, maybe some people do. I mean, we have to have that, but I. I don't know about you, but I work harder at this business and I stress more and I would beat the wall more and I worry about it and I obsess about it more than I ever did a job, you know. And I was you know, I was out there selling. I was working 6 hours a day, making 120 grand a year, and I hated every second of it. You know what I mean? And
Its impact is more important than income.
I, yeah. And I'm sure, you know, most entrepreneurs, if you're really doing it for a purpose and impact, you'll just think about that. The money takes care of itself. And so, but anyway, back to that. Okay, I had the purpose for football, and the doctor thing I was capable of doing. Now, it was hard, and for some reason I like hard shit. I don't know why. Too.
Because you have an identity around that. Yep. This is all identity.
But I mean, if I get bored, you know, I was so bored doing oil field sales, especially my last stint out there. I was just that's how I got in the insurance business. I was sitting at a cigar bar, not doing anything, talking to people about nothing. One of my buddies said, "Hey, I'm doing this insurance thing. You want to do it?" I said, "Yeah." I'm just sitting here, you know. So, but anyway, getting back to the relationship thing, um, you know, I would just get, you know, and how it's played out in my dating life between and after the marriages is, I don't know what it is, but either it's women can't stand me, or if we date a little bit, and I'm a lot. Like I'll admit that I'm a lot. I'm a whole lot. But like, or they'll fall for me or something, and I'm not ready for that. It's always this disconnected, you know, for the relationship. Or I like them and it doesn't work, and so sometimes it's just, I hate to say it. I mean, I love women. Don't get me wrong, but it's like the whole dance thing you do, and I see some of your posts about relationships and stuff. For me, I I don't want to try that hard right now. It's just in the season that I am in life. You know what I mean? And
Let me ask you, going back to the marriages, do you recognize a pattern of who you were before we got to engagement and all that stuff? What would
Mhm.
be a common thread of how you were or who they were that between across all three marriages?
Can be honest here.
I hope.
I was, well, yeah, I'm always honest. I don't know why. You have to remember stuff when you lie, but I was not the man I am today. I was a weak,
You in what ways? Get specific.
um, in the common, red pill culture, they would call it a beta. But if it was like on a spectrum of a beta dude that like a woman can browbeat and wouldn't take up for themselves,
Yeah,
like
can you
it
be
was
specifics? You're using generalizations of, well, I,
trying to think. Yeah, so I'm trying to think about like I just would not have a backbone in a relationship, and I thought that women talking to me like my mom did my dad, that was normal to me.
hold on,
And
let's pause for a second on that because you keep talking about your parents' relationship, which I totally agree influences. How is your mom with you?
not great.
So
And yeah, and we didn't. Uh, Probably was because my grandmother. I know a lot of it. She was really jealous of mine and my grandmother's relationship, like her whole life.
okay.
And she, let me think. My grandmother was basically my mom, right? And made it apparent that you know how they do the favorite thing, like our grandparents would. Her bride's my favorite, all that stuff. And we didn't really interact that much. It was just not a. My grandmother just would buy us clothes and stuff, and like my mom would get mad that we got too much red stuff because that was my favorite color, and take it back, stuff like that. So, and we didn't end up well. And she passed a few weeks ago, and like wouldn't see me the last couple of times we were in the same town. Wouldn't talk to me. Like came and kept my kids probably 10 miles up the road from me. And like wouldn't see me, stuff like that. And so it was one of those deals where I transformed myself at the end of my third marriage. I don't know if you're familiar with the 75 hard.
I don't want to go into marriages yet, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we got back to childhood because there's a
Yeah,
pattern here, and we're gonna get there.
okay,
So
that's fine.
you and mom, you and grandma had a great relationship. Got
Yeah,
that covered.
right.
Is there, when you think back to your childhood, is there a specific memory where you were coming to mom with a want or a need and she dismissed you? And I know there's probably several instances. I want to know if there's one that just like immediately comes up.
We didn't have much of a relationship that I remember. That's the weird part about it. Like, there's no like childhood memories of my mother that stick out that I can say, oh, it's that. Oh, it's
That's why I'm
that.
asking you just to explore if there's any memories.
No, that'd be something I'd have to think about or something because I can't literally never pick up my dad stuff, but my mom just she doted on my brother, I think. I don't know.
How do you
It's
know that
crazy.
it on your brother?
Well, he was poor Patrick. He was the second one. My mom didn't, my grandmother didn't. That was the rhetoric I do remember. I found out later, my grandparents hand out vehicles too. That's in the South, where I know where you from, but they give me their old vehicle and they change the oil in it. Well, my grandmother gave me one, and she didn't tell me this till I was an adult. I was in college. And my mom sent my brother and asked her for like $10,000 for him a car. You know, stuff like that. And I've never understood my mother as far as the way she acted. Even when her and my dad divorced and stuff. Like I just it's been a very nondescript relationship my whole life with her.
Yeah.
And there's not much that sticks out. I mean, she used to make cookies for all my football games through JUCO, and everybody loved that. And, she wasn't a bad person. It's just what it was.
She wasn't the
I
mom you
don't,
needed.
what's that?
She wasn't the mom you needed.
I guess so. Yeah. And, I, my grandmother, like, even as an adult, like, there's very few people I talk to every day. My kids, whatever. And then, like, my grandmother and I talked every freaking day as an adult until she died, right? So, that
Right.
there was that, but
I'm going to pause you because you keep taking me back to things that you want to talk about, which I understand.
no, I get it. I'm
No,
not
no,
into
pause,
this.
pause, pause. You don't have to fill in the gaps of the knowledge. The part of what we're trying to do is not logic everything. And I know it's hard, especially for men who like to be problem solvers. And you've done some great self awareness work to recognize where a lot of your attachment, especially with your past wives, came from. When you say that your mom was a browbeater, how did you come to that summary? How did you come to that experience of knowing and labeling her as a browbeater?
She would talk down to my dad in front of us.
Okay, give
They would
me,
argue in front.
for instance, one really memorable argument they had where she just laid into it.
Was a few. She'd always get mad if he drank milk or drank all the last of the milk, stuff like that. And it was just this huge deal. And I'm like, there's milk at the store.
Did they ever stand up to her in any memory you have? No, not once. Okay.
But not to her face. I mean, he did a lot of stuff behind her back. Yeah.
And was there a time where you felt protective of your dad, like you should stand up and say something? No, you just knew not to cross mom.
It was such a nondescript thing. It's like she wasn't there. And I just was struggling to just remember stuff about her, and don't.
Association. It's a protective mechanism, right? Because while you're kind of painting the picture in one way that she wasn't a good person in the family dynamic, maybe not as a human being in general, right? But your
Right.
experience of her was unhealthy compared to grandma, who was a saint of a human. And there is something in your nervous system that is wired to be drawn to women like her, right? That happens in childhood. And when we can get to even specific memories and beliefs where you even look at, and this is how it works in childhood, like our opposite sex parent is the first experience of the opposite sex of love that we have. And so if it's not healthy as children, that's how we start to become internally wired to equate to love. This feeling of rejection, abandonment, shame, judgment, whatever equals love. That's what I grew up knowing. I didn't question it. But as soon as we go out into adulthood, we start to find people who feel familiar and we label that as love. And you seem to have a series of patterns of that because between the marriages, when they didn't work out, because why would you want to be with somebody who treated you like shit? We didn't go back and heal the version of us that chose from the get go, from the second you met that person, what was flawed in your nervous system. Not that you were wrong or bad or right or good or how your choices, they're just choices, and start to heal that so we don't continue to make that choice. Because what's happening is that your call it inner child, little Brian, is trying to get mom's love, is trying to go, why don't you see me? Why don't you value? You are my mother. You should unconditionally love me. You never experienced that from your mother. Now you're projecting it onto partners now and expecting that they should. I'm of the ilk. Unconditional love is only for parents and children. I don't believe our partners should be unconditional love because if you're constantly cheating on me, beating me, why would I love you? Right?
People do it.
Right? But I think, and there's also the religious side of things and people that want to shame you for the biblical interpretation of things that is again an interpretation of things, and people pick and choose from the Bible the things they want to use to try to shame you or make you do something that aligns with their values, right? So all of that can be mixed in there as well, right? And again, there's no judgment here, no good, bad, right, or wrong, because
No, I understand. Yeah.
everybody has their own value system. So for you moving forward, now we've recognized you had a flawed picker, if you will,
Yeah.
right? You were really drawn to people who treated you in a way that was not healthy and not how you deserved, because chances are we don't have a healthy definition of love to start with. That's why I wanted you to write out how grandma was towards her husband, because that seems to be what you ultimately desire. Except I'm going to actually throw a little bit of a wrench in that and say that you trying to find a woman like grandma is not who you should find. You should become like grandma. That the way that grandma modeled partnership, the way that she held herself in the community, that's who you become, and you draw in a partner that you can love and care for. Because grandma seemed to be inner masculine in a lot of ways, being a business owner and being really driven. And I think the energy I get from you is that you would love to be able to provide and take care of someone who loved and adored you and didn't treat you like mom, but almost the antithesis. Is that fair?
Sure. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Okay. So when you look at grandma as she was this amazing human, she saw you, is what it sounds like. She valued you, she cherished you. In what ways are you not quite to the level that grandma was? If you had to get specific on qualities or characteristics.
Oh, like person now,
Yeah.
like it's
Now we'll
off
bring it
the
down.
word. Well, it's really funny. I've inadvertently started being like her in my I had to move to my oldest hometown. His mom was having some trouble, and we're dealing with some stuff with custody and stuff like that.
Yep.
But what it's done is, first of all, I'm living in a small town again, which is not my hometown, which is even better. We have a Walmart, so that's cool. But like, that's look, I promise you, it's not a small town. It's got a fair Walmart. Red. Like, I've gotten involved in a church, and I don't agree with all the things they say and do, and I speak my mind there, and then they respect me enough to do that. But I've started getting in the community here, going to the gym, Rotary Club. I think I'm the youngest one by like 8 years.
Rotary Club?
But it's fun. Like, their Christmas party was crunk as hell. And so I've come here. I'm working to get back to access to my son, but in the meantime, I think God's given me a place to, like, I can make an impact in this community here. I don't know exactly how, but and that's how she was. Like, we didn't even have a wake when she died, because we would have been there till like 3 days, like because people were so, and I've never, she was so good with me that I never was upset when she died, because we joked about her mortality, but she got older and sick. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
and so I do think a lot of what you're saying is be like the person you want to attract. And I've heard some tracks of that, people saying that, and I started thinking about it. And we can't make relationships the focus of our life, or we're going to be sorely disappointed. That's one of the things I've
Focus, but also not deny that you crave that.
also do. Yeah, I don't deny that at all. But especially for a guy who's I've got this money printing license that I can do. I know how to work it, all that. And like, when you just get solely in your purpose and get focused on things, and then you focus on helping people, and I don't count money anymore when I write insurance policy. I know it's weird, but like, I used to would figure it up, and I'm like, no, we're gonna get what this person wants and needs. That's something they can stay on, and then the universe, God, or whatever will take care of things from there. And you know that in your businesses and all that. And so that's one of the things I've been trying to do. Now, we didn't agree, me and my grandmother didn't agree on everything. Like, me being a independent contractor with no health insurance, and I mean, like,
Yeah, what
she's
are your
probably
thoughts on the qualities
no, yeah,
around you?
yeah. We disagreed on a lot of things, but the thing I liked about her is she was very masculine out in the world, but she was very feminine with Paige, with her husband. I even serving him while he was ill, and degrading over the years. She was in the home.
Specifics with how she would serve him. You gave some examples when he was sick. Um,
Yeah.
did she ever tell you stories of how she would operate before he got sick? Because it's one thing for her to move into caregiver role, which actually, think about this, puts her in a mothering role for her partner, which you've got a unhealthy relationship with mom, and you were getting mom partners in your relationship.
Yeah, and
Healthy.
Paige was too, really, when he was sick, right? So he was the love of her life before that. Like, she would brag to me about it, and even until she died, like how he could win all the golf tournaments, won all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? They were wonderful together. Um, she he talked about his flaws in kind of a good way. You know, she said, you know, she didn't really drink. He drank, of course. That's kind of why he got in that wreck and stuff. But she just revered him as a man before. Like, he ran track at LSU, like back in the '60s and stuff. Like, I've got his old fraternity stuff from that, you know, and he was a phenomenal human being. I never knew him like that. I never knew him pace to be like that. But she painted the picture of their relationship before, where it was just this, and it's not perfect. I know it's not. You know, my grandmother's not.
For logic, no, try to justify it. Keep going with how grandma described him. Because what I get is she looked up to him. She was proud of him. She respected him, right?
Right.
Um,
And she bragged on him because he was worthy of respect. And see, that's the thing I think that I missed a lot in my previous years. You know, I kind of found my way in life after my last divorce. And so, as long as I focus on progressing and stuff like that, you got to be somebody that you can be respected and revered. And I'll be honest, back in those days, I was, in those 30 years, animal. I, I don't even know and I know this is easy thing to say about your exes, but I don't know why I went on second dates with all three of them, you know, like now, like, you know, like,
that's what you've got to learn. That's what you've got to unlearn is what parts of me were drawn to that I went on the second date. And even your dating history since then, when you're like, these crazy women, like all this, there is a part of you that has a history of self abandoning your wants. Right. And so it's learning to own your wants,
right.
to go, no, my wants are valued, even though mom taught me they weren't. And even though my ex wives taught me they weren't, I'm now standing for that. And even ideally getting to the point when it comes to seeking out partnership of not what can they do for me? How can they make me feel better about myself? But coming from a place of service of how can I pour into somebody else's life? Knowing that you only want reciprocity, that somebody would equally be coming at you with that, not, ooh, how can he support my lifestyle? Or, ooh, I need him to complete me. You each come into it complete looking, how can this add value to my life?
No, I agree. And, you know, yeah, I heard this saying one time, and again, I love relationships. I love intimacy. I love all that in every way. But I, I've experienced it with the wrong people, even outside of these marriages. And I'm gonna tell you, sitting on my couch by myself watching TV is preferable to that. Not saying I'm quitting or stuff like that, but you know, the the one thing I've missed out is as I look at the quality of my exes, especially the wives, is I didn't judge character and intentions very well, and if that makes sense, you know, and again, it was just like, oh, this is just what, and it was about as flippant of a decision as with the first one, you know. Like, oh well, shoot, let's get married, sure, let's do it, you know. Oh, we went on 2 days, we're cool, let's, you know, and you know, I don't know that I even want, you know, you look going forward, you think about it, but the way things are set up in our society and stuff, you know, I have kids with two sets of moms. I mean, I'm on the road between them, you know what I mean, and all that. I don't know that the whole traditional setup of things is something that would even work for me until down the road, even if I want to, you know, like, you
Oh,
know,
I don't want the white picket fence anymore. I got married because I thought that's what you should do. And I followed my parents' model where my mom was, I think she was 20 when she met my dad, 21 when they got married. When I turned 20, the guy I was dating, I was like, oh, well, cool. This is just going to my timeline. That's it. Right. And so and this is what I love and why I say I am more interested in co-creating a life with someone, meaning I am letting go of all expectations, right? I did the whole white picket fence, like follow the path, the trajectory of American modern society, and it kind of fucked me over, right? Not that I regret it. I would not take it back for a second because I love who I am now and wouldn't be the person without that. And I have also redefined what love means to me because I said I love you to one person for 13 years and I had this actions, behavior, and the word love. And that was not healthy for me. I don't want to move forward and recreate that. So I had to like break down what love means to me. And I came up with a very simple definition, but I recommend everybody going through and defining what do I want love to mean? Because what I've experienced in the past, not healthy. And for me, it is and as simple as I can make it. I'm oversimplifying it for a reason. It is intimacy, meaning into me I see, meaning you know me and I know me. In order for me to love myself, I have to know me, which means I need to take time to get to know me, good and bad. You see me, right? You spend time with me. You are curious about me. Everything that I want from a partner outside of me, I need to learn how to do that for myself first to know whether it's happening from somebody else or not. And then the co-creation part is where I break it down. And again, I oversimplify it with frameworks is connection, chemistry, and compatibility. Now, you may have had good chemistry with them because oftentimes when we have unhealthy relationships with our parents and we find that in a partner that's similar, it gets all of the bells and whistles going off in our nervous system that we label as spark and passion and whatever and attraction.
That's why the butterfly would tell you to run. My thingy. See?
Yep.
Drive right sprat away. I think run that fast.
You can be really attracted to someone without there being that nervous system dysregulation, right? And part of that is getting to know them, which in our modern society, we don't take time to do that. We just jump into bed and then hopefully it works out later when most of the time it doesn't, but we're chemically attached now. There is connection, which is the friendship piece. Like, do I generally like being around you? Are you my friend? And that seems like maybe something you might have missed with your exes is like, are they even good people that I want to spend time with? No, but I've got maybe some other things in there that's keeping me attached. And then the compatibility piece is where I find that 99% of relationships miss out on because they're so distracted by the other two. Is are we heading in the same direction? Do we have the same values? Do we want the same things out of life and relationship and partnership? Are we trying to work together to create something together? And most people miss out on that. Now, I will give 20-year-olds a pass because you don't know yourself. You don't know what life is. You don't know like you're still figuring it out. And most people get married in their 20s, like when you're still trying to figure it out. So then you're spending, most of your 30s, and especially when kids come into play, trying to like keep your ruts together. And you're like, who am I? And you often grow apart, right? But that compatibility piece to me, if that's not there, no matter how good the chemistry and connection is, it will not last and sustain for a long-term relationship. And so in order to have compatibility and seek that out in partner, you have to know what your values are and what your desires are. There's nothing wrong with enjoying your alone time. There's nothing wrong with rather be single, but I think that there's a little bit of an asterisk with that. I'd rather be single. You should rather be single than treated poorly. And that has been the experience you've had in significant relationships. So, how do we go from I have a past of unhealthy relationships, but that doesn't have to define my future. But if I keep operating as Brian from the past, I'll continue to get those same results. So, what is it that is something that needs to be healed or worked on? And maybe you've already done this so that you don't dating relationships get into the same pattern because you're the common denominator.
And I agree with that. There, one of the things that and I'm trying to do it in the context of my daughter, if this makes sense. Like, how would I want someone to be with my daughter if this is someone I think's cool? They pass the looks test or whatever. You meet them, they're cool. It's like one of the things that I have a hard time doing is when I see a woman that I think's attractive or can come across one or whatever, I start immediately figuring out reasons why I shouldn't talk to her. Just get, you know,
Mechanism.
it's just like I make a list. She's probably got an ex, and he's gonna stab me. I just I end and I just walk away like, you know what I mean?
Catastrophizing?
Well, I don't want to get in a fight with an ex. I've had no fights in my life.
You have a very creative imagination. Imagine if it's that for good and not evil.
You know, I mean, this is wild out here in the streets, okay? But like, no, I come at now. It's like, okay, I come at people with some compassion and some understanding. Like that's very hard for me to do, especially with females because of my history with them. Especially, the stuff I'm dealing with now with this deal. Like it would if I didn't think about it and work on it and wasn't intentional about it. I would hate every female just because your ex is being abundantly syndicate, right?
Ask you this.
That's not right.
It's an interesting thing that you like the first thing that came out of your mouth when you're kind of evaluating a potential partner is an ex. Is there a part of you that judges yourself for having exes and complicated baby mama scenarios?
Not anymore. I'm not around people anymore that speak illy of that.
I'm
They'd already
asking about them. I'm asking about your own.
no, but I used to. What I'm trying to say about that is I used to. Like I was embarrassed about it because people that it hadn't happened to yet, or it hadn't happened to, or were better than me, would shake me about it, and I would feel shame. And so, i- in my journey of healing in general, was going through my block numbers the other day, and like if somebody's not my children or somebody that I'm financially tied with work or my business, it's one of those things. If you give me some shit or whatever, you really aren't in my intimate circle, my innermost circle. Then I'm just gonna kick you out, and like that served me a lot. And I overkill it sometimes, with
Good way to
female
kick
dynamic.
everybody out who's not perfect.
Not not so much perfect, but like especially early on in an interaction with even males, like even friendship business type things. But if they try and talk down to me or like give me some shit about something, I don't even.
Talking down to you is a character trait of somebody who is belittling you. Right. Totally.
It's mostly that because I took that for so long from everybody, and I just took it right, and I believed. I started believing, and that's on me. I believed it, you know.
Let me
But
ask you, hold on, I'm gonna because there's something here. When somebody, even if they're new to your world, belittles you in whatever way, shape, or form, how do you respond to removing them from your life?
I just do it.
So what does that look like though? Is it like blocking them out?
It's,
Off do you
I
have?
was blocking them on my phone. If we're on socials, let them off there. I don't give them nice.
It's a very passive way. Okay, so there's a couple different survival responses, and I'm not saying that you have to reach out to these people. I'm just giving you a seed here. So passive or flight survival response would be just blocking them. And I encourage everybody to block anybody who treats you poorly and not even giving them the time of day. What I want to caution you on is not to look at relationships as business, right? So, how you handle business should be different than how you handle interpersonal relationships. I know for men, it can be very easily to just treat it all the same because in business, you remove the emotion, right? It's very logical, it's very transactional, it's very step by step. These are the processes, and I don't want to deal with somebody who's not great to do in business. But when it comes to other human beings and relationships, friendships, parenting, children, baby mamas, and partners, there are other people to consider in that and their feelings of it. Not that you're responsible for it, but that you need to consider sharing your truth to try to create connection. So when we have disconnect in relationship, and this is a really great kind of litmus test for how emotionally healthy your partner is. If I am in partnership with you and you've said something that hurt my feelings, I could lash out at you, attack you back, berate you, browbeat you. That would be a fight response. When my emotional state is triggered, I fight back. The flight response would be I shut down and I just kind of avoid you, or I go hide in the room and I'm just crying in the room, but I don't let you see that. That would be flight. Freeze would be I just am paralyzed and I don't know what to do. I don't say anything. A lot of people are stuck in functional freeze, meaning you're still operating in life, but you're like so disconnected from life because you're just frozen in that moment, even though the time has passed. And then there's another one called fawn, which is where basically if I'm berating you, beating you across the head or whatever, you try to get closer to appease me, to get closer. You're fawning at me to try and make it okay. So we all have one of those four from childhood. It seemed to me that it used to be fight for you, the way that you said that you like went and talked to the customer and like let him have it. And then that's what actually got you freed to go do what you wanted to do. In your marriages, though, it sounds like personal relationships, you almost have a flight or a freeze where you don't advocate for how you're being mistreated.
Yeah. With the one of the things I did, and I was trying to think about this. My second wife, my oldest kid's mom. Like I was actually very intentional about thinking about that relationship and ending it. And to the point, like, I went to counseling for like 6 sessions behind her back and talked about it with a guy. And there were several reasons. One, she would hit me, you know, and like way smaller than me. I'm 6'3". I'm like,
But still physical abuse, and it's very
right.
it's a weird identity to have for a male to consider himself being in an abusive relationship.
And my thing is like I used and I was a great stepdad to her son, all that stuff. And I guess I was just supposed to take it. And when I sat her down and said, "Hey, this is why I want a divorce," this is what I did. I sat her down. I said, we're not acting like partners anymore. That we had this kid. We just really nice to have a kid. I said, and you hid me in this, that, and the other. I spelled it out to her, and I said, I don't want to be married to you. And like that was probably the most I'd stuck up for myself in a relationship. And to this day, like she still like hates me, loves me. It's like that weird dynamic because I did that because I don't think anybody's ever done that with her. But like, um, the biggest thing is with relationships and stuff like that. I'm trying to be more compassionate. I forget where we were going with that, but I did try and be more compassionate. Survival response. Okay, so now I'm like, okay, I control how this conversation goes. Okay, and probably one of the biggest things that's helped me in the last couple of interactions I've had with women is not set the expectation that we're going to text 24/7 all the time because I've done that before. And then when I can't do that, you call it a pattern interrupt in your stuff. Like when I can't do that or something, it's very messed up for them, right? And if I don't communicate it properly, I'm a firm believer that these text things and constant connection like that, I think it ruins a lot of dynamics in relationships, at least in mine in the
That's
past.
because, well, let's explore why that is.
Yeah.
Right? It's a relevant point, right? The good morning text and the texting all day. And yes, so much of us have our phones with us 24/7. So a lot of meaning is made up when we don't respond. Right? So, oftentimes you can also tell how emotionally regulated a person is and how they're using you for their own emotional regulation and maybe vice versa, right? So, if I don't get a text and I feel some sort of way, and I'll give the example of how I handle that because I've done a lot of work on not being anxious with that kind of stuff. You have to, again, maybe you do this, maybe you don't. Look at what other possibilities may also be true because we build stories in our head of what that non-response marks
And make it
and they spiral. So part of that is working together, right? And this is where it's beautiful for relationships to heal the relationship wounds that may be created, right? We can't heal relationship wounds in a vacuum. So it's, if they say, why, okay, let's role play this. Give me an example of a situation where girl was texting you all day, you didn't respond, and then she felt a certain way about it.
things like that. I won't get past a couple of days anymore. I'm trying to think.
I know we're trying.
I'm out. That's just, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so I text you 3 times. You're finally able at the end of the day to like look at the text and you started to see me spiral of like, what's going on? Oh my God, are you okay? Is everything okay?
Actually had that happen. I actually had that happen. It was a couple years ago. I was dating a gal. We were long distance. I was out west. She was in Fort Worth. And we constantly texted, right? All the time. We weren't doing it. Okay. And then she told me, and guys are just, I told you in that post the other day, we're real simple, like, and
You
then,
say you are, but if you listen to this whole episode,
but you know what I'm saying?
yes, we are.
Let me make this point. Let me make this point. She's like, okay, you go have fun with your kids this weekend. Don't worry about me.
Yeah.
That's what she said. Don't worry about texting me.
Okay.
Right? Which is a great thing to say if you mean it. And if you really are okay with that. So I went with my kids. We toured the hotel room. That's what we do. We flip tables. We do all, and jumbo beds. And so I didn't hear from her. Well, I didn't talk to her for like a couple days, like she had said. Right. And then she's wishing me farewell on Sunday evening when I'm driving back into town. I'm toddler tired. I'm not with them all the time. So I'm not in their shape all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking? I said, I did, and like she's thinking I ghosted her or something, and like I'm like, I did what you said. I said, you said you were okay. Go have fun with your kids. And I did that, and now we're saying goodbye. And you know, it was one of those things that it worked out because she wasn't a lot of the person I thought she was in retrospect. But I just the more I limit that kind of expectation going into something, like the last first date I had, for
Hold on,
instance.
hold on, hold on. Let's stick with that example. Okay. So, because again, like for people listening, this stuff happens all the time, but I want you to understand where your responsibility is and where your communication can lie, right? So that you can prevent that or address it when it happens, because it shows up in a lot of different ways. So she sends you a text message say on Thursday, go have a great weekend with your kids, right? Yeah. And say what you said again. Like, how did she phrase it? Say it again closer to the mic. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Don't worry about me. Like, just text me your dad. Well, it's just things like that. It wasn't a big deal, right?
What did you take that to mean?
I'm not going to text you all weekend. I'm going to focus on my kids.
Okay, so you took that as here's permission for me to put aside the relationship right now and be present with my kids, which I think is beautiful, right? So, a couple of things, and I'm not saying this is on you, like it's in her inability to communicate as well. Because what could have been by either party, and we will talk on Monday, setting some sort of future date of when you will connect. Because what likely happened is he went 3 days without thinking about me, right? And then built a story and an emotion.
But it goes to the worst case thing. That's why I hate
Right.
I hate texting.
Again, it's triggered in the relationship. And so in order to heal that, we have to address it, not just keep cycling through. So part of when you become aware that she's now saying goodbye is getting curious as to I took what you said as you're wanting me to be present with my kids because it's important to me, which I assume that that was the permission. Like you took it as a really nice, beautiful gesture from her. And now you're pulling away because why? Like, help me understand what happened over the last 3 days so that we don't keep repeating this. This is where we take disconnect and we try to repair. It's not that you'll never have disconnect with somebody and that's going to, this like long-term relationships, there's always ups and downs, but it is help me see things how you see things
Right.
and having a partner that will want to see how you see things and you guys coming together to go, what do we solve for moving forward? So she took it probably, I'm just going to make some assumptions, as he spent 3 days not thinking about me because if he had thought about me, he would have texted me. Right. So some of that might have been a little manipulation, right? Of I'm going to throw this out there and see if he messages me because that means that he cares when it's making up a story. What is true is you guys had an agreement that you were going to go spend the weekend with your kids. Everything else she made up as a story. We all do this, right? Well, even you getting the message of goodbye, you made up a story of she's emotionally immature, she can't communicate, or whatever stories you made up. Uh, and so part of that is what is my responsibility in that and even owning that. Oh, I misunderstood or maybe we need to work on some communication where you do want me to check in at least once a day to let you know I'm thinking about you. I can do that. Sure. When I'm with my kids, my priority is my kids. I will send you a good night text every night, even though I may not be able to get to you during the day. It's not personal. Just please understand that my kids are my main focus. And I don't like, right, having that conversation when there's that disconnect. And
Thanks.
you should, what was that?
This is why I hadn't been dating. This is a lot, and it was.
Why? Because that's relationships. That's healthy.
I know, and I'm not. I just don't. Like, that's a lot to think about. I'm in that weird, like, and again, I'm not against women or nothing like that. I'm in that weird tipping point of profitability in my business. Okay, it's like I've been through the dip, like way dip. Like whenever my ex and I split up, the last one, I told her, I said, and I'd kind of transformed myself and started taking up for myself. When she would call me to the carpet in front of her family we were living with, I just started deciding to take up for myself and then make everybody real uncomfortable, which, which swung way to the other side of what it was been like the whole time. And when we split, like she took me out of the house and she wanted me to go, and I finally did. And I told her this, and I said, I'm gonna tell you something. I said, you're not gonna understand my decisions anymore for a while. And I said, the reason being is because they're not gonna be based on your convenience anymore. They're gonna be based upon me getting in every way better for these children to be a good dad for them going forward. And you know, I have a weird way of speaking truth like that. And I think a lot of times I need to hear it myself, and God just puts it out of my mouth sometimes. And that's still kind of where we're at. I mean, you know, everything in business and everything you do in life that's worth something and is hard, it takes a long time, more than you think it will, you know? It's like, oh, this should be 2 months. And then it's, 7 months later. But I'm on that tipping point. And my thing too is when I try too hard in the dating thing, when I seek too hard, it doesn't work. Like it doesn't, but I find that when I'm
Is it doesn't work, or is it that your picker is still broken? Because the piece that I'm the thing that you're not considering is the reciprocity of this, right? So I gave you the example of options for you to repair the connection. And equally, can you imagine what it would be like to have a partner who would, let's say, I sent that farewell text and you're like, hold on, what did you take it to mean? And I would go, oh my God, you were right. I totally took that the wrong way. That was my bad. I am so sorry that I realized there's some stuff I had to work through because I projected onto you and that was unfair. Do you accept my apology for getting a little bit out of character? Right. So how would that feel for you for somebody equally to be pursuing the connection and repairing it as well?
I mean, that would be good. Yeah, that would.
So I totally get that you're looking at it through the lens of the past people you've chosen. These types of issues, when they come up, if you show up in integrity, right, you show up out of curiosity. If that person uses that to then point the finger back at you and then be the victim, that's your sign, right? Dating is doing its job by eliminating people that you're not compatible with.
Sure.
But I promise you that there are healthy partners doing this work who will own their stuff in a healthy way, not in a fawning, I need to get close to you, but in a way that builds connection. And I think that's what's missing is that you haven't had the experience where connection gets built and you can start to put some of these walls down little by little as they've proven they're trustworthy, right? Yeah. And that may take longer for you. And I think based on your experience, a slow burn is probably the better way to go. Meaning that you're actually approaching it more so from a friendship perspective. Is this somebody over time I can start to share with? Now, part of that may be put a pause on dating and learn how to build trust and healthy friendships with women that is not romantic. I've had to do that. So I've spent the last 6 months going, okay, I had a big mistrust with men. A lot of I just realized I was going into dating with that mistrust. I was like, that's not going to get me what I want. So I paused on dating. I was intentional about connecting with men who were doing self-awareness work, who were in therapy, who were actually speaking to this on social media. And I connected with them as friends. And I have 4 now amazing males in my life that are modeling for me how to have healthy communication, even in a friendship. Like I'll call them out on their bullshit or when they said they were going to do something they didn't. Because I'm like, integrity is important. And asking them questions even about like, hey, how would you handle this situation? Or they're telling me how they date. So I'm almost studying and observing what healthy men do because I have a history of picking improperly. Right. And so I'm relearning, like now that I'm back into the dating world, I'm like, oh, that guy ghosted me. Okay, cool. I know what that means. That means that he is not able to have hard conversations. And I'm going to be the one who has to bring up hard conversations. So I'm not even going to reach out because I know a lot of people, when you get ghosted, you like send them the final, like, right? Because you're trying to get their attention. You're trying to get them. It's like this weird sick cycle. But that was invaluable for me to build trust and learn how I can be more vulnerable to men, right? Even just in a friendship capacity in a way that doesn't get me hurt. Because that was the or the correlation I needed to break to start to build healthy.
Well, that's funny you say that. In my business, like there's a lot of opportunities for that. And honestly, as the life that a lot of business people that are in business for themselves live, how people don't understand it. Like they don't get it. You got these No, but you've got this lined up all day. I'm sitting there watching the clock on a CE calendar now all day for the rest of today, so I can legally sell insurance in Texas still. So, but I think there's some opportunities there for that, and that they're geographically far away, which helps too. And you know what I mean. And I actually live in the middle of nowhere, so I'll promise you, like, yeah, well, and it actually works well because it's funny because as you work on yourself and become better and stuff, you run across better people, as you
Well,
know.
because you stop tolerating BS.
Yeah, and you vibrate on a different frequency and all that. And my thing is one of the biggest things, my thing to do is just give somebody the benefit of the doubt. Like,
Right.
you don't have to propose to them or anything, but just, we're we're in our 40s, like shit's happened to all of us in our 40s, I mean, we're everybody's kind of broken in some way, and you can't just like, you know, quit. But I like what you're saying there, and I actually have several long distance people in the insurance business that, and I respect them, as a person, and they're doing what.
I get that they're business colleagues. Are you able to have vulnerable conversations with them, or would that be crossing
So,
professional boundaries? So just focus on those, right? Like where it's just like, hey, I'm really struggling today. I know it's hard for men because you don't want to be seen as like a beta or weak. It's like women actually might crave that. But how do you start to just a little bit at a time start to build trust with things that um aren't necessarily so comfortable and leaning into that so you can learn how you operate in a partnership and a relationship slowly.
big thing is, if you know who you are, and I do, like as far as in the masculine beta, whatever, I know I'm a dude. I know I'm doing the right thing, so I know who I am, and so turn that vulnerability on just a little bit, especially. I can work on that. Like honestly, that would be something I could work on, and when you're not like worried about an outcome or whether this person's gonna like it or go out with it, you know what I mean? And probably you said something about this earlier. And one of the things I've worked on doing a lot, and I really don't TikTok. I hear some of these things on TikTok, but like, I'm like, but there's some good shit on there. So it's like one of them was like the only thing that causes negative emotions are expectations.
Yep.
Like, and that helped me to deal with my exes. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're gonna do dumb stuff. They're not gonna understand that. They don't understand me either, and like I don't expect anything. Like, some people, some old jobs. I mean, you think about old jobs you've had or places you worked, you're like, can they get more stupid than this? And then they do every time. Like, you think,
Well, but also in the opposite too, the good, right? Some of the most amazing things that happen in life are unexpected and unpredictable. And a lot of us, it's a survival response trying to control and like be hyper vigilant and prevent future hurts. But you're also closing off the opportunity for pleasure
yeah,
and amazing things, much like when you're like, I'm done with dating because you're basing future dating based on past relationships. And it's like, let's focus on the present. Right now, do I feel in a healthy state to pursue a partnership with someone? Now, from just some of what you said, it sounds like probably not right now. Like now's not that it's not the focus, but eventually maybe that's when you kind of need to gauge yourself. Like my break for 6 months, I gave myself 6 months as a challenge. Um, because again wanted to shift off of relationships. But there came a time like mid-December where I was like, I think I'm ready. I feel like I'm ready to pour into that and give myself to that. So I'm open to it. I'm not making it a full-time job as some people do, but it's being energetically open to it. And also, am I approaching relationships from a healthy place or a traumatized, triggered?
that compatibility thing, I think is a huge thing. I think you have you probably have on your content, but I'll hammer on that more because we don't think about it that way, you know.
We do on
And
feel.
and then my feels have blinded me my whole freaking life.
Your pickers up.
But it's fine, it's funny, but and another thing I hope you do more of, and so this is the first post of yours I saw, it's that long form we did on your Christmas. Like and the identity around, like I haven't done Christmas with people that I've done solo Christmas for the last like 4 years. And a lot of people can't hear that, right? And I'm doing it also from a place with my exes. It would be devastating for them not to do Christmas morning with my kids. And, and don't really give a shit. You know what I mean? It's like
It's the
option.
meaning that they place.
Yeah, there's no meaning behind it for me. There's meaning for me being with my kids and letting them play and jumping my trampoline out here, stuff like that. So, but I think a lot of people need to hear stuff like that, and I kind of liken that to I don't know if you've heard Tom Segura's wife talking about having to cut off toxic family awards in people.
Yep.
He's right, and like people need to hear that. Like those two kind of messages there, because there's people that like they the end of the world if they're alone on a holiday just because.
Because their identity around it, right? So, for example, if I'm a mom who's not with her kids on Christmas, the projection of other people's viewpoints, right? And I had to deal with this in my own family, because when I don't have my kids, I don't go back home to spend time with my family, and I'm fairly classy. No, it's just me, my grandmother, and her blog posts on Facebook. When that happens, that's fine. Uh, But this is where people can label it as selfish, and I'm totally fine with somebody perceiving I'm selfish because the world, I mean, I've healed people pleasing and codependency, because me going to go back to my family and pretend like it's Christmas per how I grew up and watching my niece and nephew open up presents and everybody, and me FaceTiming with my kids when it's too. I just don't wanna experience that where I'm trying to pretend like it's Christmas. I'd rather it just not be Christmas that day on the 25th of December and celebrate Christmas when I do have my kids and wanna create the traditions and memories. However, isn't it interesting that if you are a surgeon on call on Christmas or a police officer or first responder on Christmas and you're not there,
You're a hero.
it's acceptable because they're working, they're doing the Lord's work kind of a thing, right? Like the churches, they work on
Don't even tell me that. Like my family, like when I went home a few years ago, my sister's pregnant, so she wanted us all to come in the weekend before Thanksgiving. And so I was like, okay, great, did all that, took my son there. And my dad and I kind of had a falling out or whatever. And he was like, I had just started the job when I moved back to Midland on Labor Day, and it was Thanksgiving. And all my sister and brother and two sisters and brother, they all had normal jobs, so they had to go to work that week. I was out there with my son, and he's like, we got in a little throwdown, and afterwards he's like, why are you able to be out here? Like, you just had this job a couple months ago. I said, well, first off, Dad, I'm damn good at what I do. And then I didn't ask him. So I told him, and I said, but if his phone rings, it was in oilfield services. So if his phone rings, guess what? I got to talk to people. I got to work, and like that's that all that small town dogma or whatever, the people pleasing. I'm sure you were raised conservative Christian kind of way. Like,
Oh, but people pleasing.
the same thought process, right? Like you're supposed to come off for why don't you
It's
fly
family time.
God, like and that was probably one of the biggest things when I moved out of my ex's house to I was like, these holidays, like I would spend them with my in-laws mostly because they're in Texas and not in Mississippi where I grew up. And I'm like, I don't really want to be around if I'm honest
So
about
it's really the underlying root that's the issue, not the surface level you're working on
it. Yeah.
Christmas. And all it is perspective, right? So when I was sharing, us choosing not to be with our kid, well, I mean, by way of custody and all that, is that you don't have your kids on Christmas and you choose to spend it alone as opposed to going to go be with other people. Because I have people in that same post saying, well, don't you have any friends? I'm like, yeah, I was invited. Like, it's not that I'm just this martyr. I
Right.
chose to do a holiday, right? Or not even pretend it was a holiday for my own good.
Right.
What does it matter to somebody else than if they're hurt?
You know, I got invited from a church family. I actually spent Thanksgiving and Christmas with them, and like, wow, Christmas night, we had so much fun. Like, we were drinking, and like, me and the husband started playing guitar in like 3 hours, and like, it was probably my favorite Christmas as an adult because I wasn't miserable sitting at my in-laws' house like for a week. Everybody's sleeping there, and like, you know what I mean?
Talking about their gout and then the economy and politics.
They'll eat. Where are we gonna go eat, right? And me and Hayden got drunk and played guitar and sang on it. It was so fun. And I'm like, no, this is my life now. This is great. So I appreciate your insights. I've never thought about things like this for real.
That's the point, right? It's perspective shifting. Being able to choose a perspective that serves you best. Most people are not living a life that you would admire or want, yet those are the opinions that are loudest in our brain. And it's like,
how we stop those. I have finally turned those almost everywhere else. But really, the only place that I still struggle is on the relationship side. And you can tell that. That's why we hung on this for a minute. Because, and it's not a matter, and it's crazy. Like, I don't do anything bad anymore. I, I live by myself, go wherever I want to go, do whatever I want to do. Let's sit here and work, and I'll go, and I don't know. Maybe I need to go to more concerts. There's this 50-year-old dude playing a concert here tonight, and let's bring your own beer. So, maybe I go, but yeah, I mean, he apparently can play the drums really. Yeah, and I love live music, so
Well, that's the thing. When you start to have adventures and you start to step into a life that you love, you actually magnetize people who fit in with that and want to go on that journey with you, as opposed to needing somebody to make your life better. Now, I'm going to wrap this up by saying one thing. You
sure.
thrive inside of our self-aware army. Okay, we have okay, so it's $19 a month. So, but in that community really is what I'm more focused on for you specifically. There's three amazing, maybe some more men, but they show up to the calls that are doing this work that actually have been really helpful with the women in the group, kind of giving them a male perspective. And the women are showing up vulnerably, sharing stories about what they're experiencing. So you actually understand the women's side of things when they're dealing with, like, he didn't text me. And it's like, what's underlying all that? Because we don't deal with the surface level stuff. We get to the root of it and how they can start to correct and heal it and show up for themselves, regardless of the outcome with the other person. So I think that might be a good support system for you to practice those friendships and being that little bit more vulnerable side and safe.
Yeah, that's inviting to. Okay, that's the one on your website. That's
Yeah, I can share a link with you, but it's you can go to unblockyourbs.com/selfawarearmy, I think is the link.
y'all doing the break. Okay, I'll do the weekly. Okay, look at that. I'll hop on that. Thank you so much.
Right. So that way we can keep in touch and just kind of workshop this over time. But Brian, I thank you so much for coming on and sharing. You were
So
absolutely,
your dog snuck on your couch over there.
I know, and he was licking himself at one point, and I kind of leaned over because I was like, that doesn't need to go on YouTube.
Dogs are nasty, man. They're endless.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you, Brian. Sure, have a good one. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Unblock Your BS podcast. I hope you found this conversation as powerful and inspiring as I did. Before we wrap up, I want to extend an invitation to you. Yes, you. If you have a story to share about your own healing journey, insights on self-awareness or healing, or if you're navigating the path of personal growth and would love to explore it further, I'd love to have you as a guest on one of the future episodes. This space is all about having real, meaningful, and honest conversations, whether it's diving into a breakthrough you've had, exploring a topic that's close to your heart, or even joining me for live coaching. It's all about unblocking the belief systems and stories that might be holding you back and finding ways to fully step into your most authentic self. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, reach out to me. You can head on over to unblockyourbs.com/podcast. I'll link that up in the show notes if you want to apply to be on the show, if you want to join me for some live coaching because you really need the support and the insight. And then, hey, don't forget to share this episode with someone who might need it. Leave a review if you're loving the podcast. Tell me your favorite parts. Tell me what you want to hear. And until next time, keep unblocking your BS and creating the life you deserve. Have a good one.